Lieutenant Commander Neve Niarta and Senior Chief Petty Officer Rory de Barra, you're very, very welcome on the podcast, and it's an honour to talk to both of you this morning about a career in the Irish Defence Forces with the Irish Naval Service. I think it's so important to get this stuff out there, very welcome. Great to see you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Brendan. Good to be here.
So what I thought we'd do today is we kind of structure the conversation maybe in three different ways. So we might start off with just giving an overview of the Irish Naval Service itself, you know, its function, its objectives, its responsibilities, etc. And then we might dive into your own careers and your own personal experiences within the Irish Naval Service. And we might finish off then talking a little bit also about the recruitment process and what you look for in people joining the service as well, if that sounds good to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So yeah, I mean, can we start off then and maybe just give a high level overview of the Irish Naval Service itself?
Want to go?
You
Okay.
go there, ma'am.
So the Naval Service is based in Habolan, County Cork. We're the main seagoing agency of the state. We do maritime security, maritime enforcement. We operate within the territorial waters, which is up to 12 miles, and also we work up to the EEZ, which is up to 200 kilometres off the coast. I'll let Rory discuss the roles.
Yeah, so our high-level roles, the principal role is to defend the state against armed aggression. So for that, we're a military force. So that's why our ships are warships. A warship is a ship carrying commissioned officers that is armed to defend itself and is flying under national colours. So that's the definition of warships. But actually, for the most part, what we have are patrol vessels, which are unique to ourselves because of the waters that we operate in. But our primary role is military. Our secondary role then would be maritime defence and security operations in regards maritime interdictions. So you're talking anti-narcotics, anti-arms, this sort of stuff. So security operations out at sea. As the Lieutenant Commander said, up to the 12-mile limit, you've strict rules under the laws of the sea. So you've your 12-mile limit, which is like an extension of the state, where you've exclusive security rights and the laws that go with it. And then further out into the EEZ, which is the exclusive economic zone, which is actually where we do a huge amount of our work on behalf of the European Union, which is fisheries protection, because obviously we're an island nation. The maritime economy is so important to us. So we need I think the Fisheries Authority slogan is "Seas full of fish, coasts full of jobs," and we're a key part of enabling that security out there. Within that security element, you have fisheries inspection, you have search and rescue. So if something goes wrong out there, we're quite often the first people to respond.
Yeah, if there's any navigational, if there's anything floating in the waters that needs investigation, if there's any vessels in distress, we're always the first point to call, especially once you go outside the immediate coastal waters, because the customs and revenue have a capability within that, but outside of that, it's all the Naval Service.
Yeah. So, and like everything that happens out there, we can be involved in it. And I suppose the ships are very mobile platforms, and so in the morning, you could be doing a very regular, normal fisheries type boarding operation where you're just going out looking at it. Come lunchtime, a signal comes through, communication from base, and in the afternoon, you're out surveilling a potential drugs vessel. And come the evening time, you might be attending or assisting in a SAR. So it's an extraordinarily mobile platform and the range of things that we can do over the course of the day. And we're not confined just to Ireland. We do go overseas as well.
Yeah. Both of us have had plenty opportunities to travel abroad, which has been nice. Yeah. But each of the ships, they operate solely. We're multi-role vessels, but each one would operate independently, and each vessel would be able to provide the same amount of roles as every other vessel, whether it's armed boardings or search and rescue or navigational assistance or so each vessel independently operates, and we carry out training on board to make sure that each of the crews on each of the vessels are all up to the standards required.
That's kind of the whole of what we do. It's so complex. It's kind of hard to break it down into a one sentence, you know.
Of course, no, that's a brilliant overview, and we might get into it as we go along as well. And maybe we could talk a little bit about your own roles now as well. Maybe just introduce yourselves and your own place within the service. Neve, maybe if you'd like to start off.
So my name is Neve Nearth. Obviously, I'm from Galway originally, and I joined the Naval Service in 2001. I did a cadetship. I commissioned as an officer in 2003 as an engineering officer. So then I started my engineering training. I went to CIT initially, which is now the NMCI. I did a marine engineering degree. And as from that, I continued on to get my qualifications and ended up as a marine engineer on a ship.
Right. But what does a marine engineer Neve, what does a marine engineer on a ship actually do?
So your role would be you would operate. So there's kind of a hierarchy. So the marine engineer would be kind of the top of the branch, and you would work with a team of 15 people. You'd be responsible for kind of main and auxiliary equipment, all kind of hotel equipment, which we would classify as showers, heating, fresh water, sewage systems, all that kind of stuff. You'd be responsible for all electrical supply systems on board, electrical generation equipment, and also for maintenance to make sure that they're operating correctly all the time. You'd also have responsibility for kind of, we call it DCFF, which is damage control and firefighting. So if there was ever an incident on board, you would be the IC of that situation on board to make sure that the team and the crew respond correctly if there's ever a fire or a hull breach scenario. You're also a health and safety officer, an energy officer, and then on top of that you also have a team of 15 people, and you're responsible for their welfare and their continued professional development to make sure that their careers are progressing. Yeah, so it's a busy role.
Very busy, brilliant. Thanks for that. And Rory, what about your side?
Yeah, so within the Naval Service there are commissioned and enlisted ranks, and they've two separate roles. It is not a lot of people try to separate it out into management and workers. It's not as simple as that. There's crossover. So in my last rank, when I was a chief ERA at sea, my job at sea would be to run the engineering department on behalf of the MEO. So the MEO is in charge of the long-term planning, organising the dry docks and all that sort of stuff, and I'm in charge of the day-to-day interpretation. So if the MEO operations, the MEO decides that we need a service, there's a service coming up on this particular engine, it's up for me then to take that order, organise the three guys that I need to do the job, work with the storeman on board to ensure the parts are there, and if there is an issue, I bring that back up to the MEO, and you actually work in tandem. Yeah. So it's almost impossible to separate it out into very, very clear, distinct roles. At sea, I have to be able to do every single job that the Lieutenant Commander does, because if she was to get injured, in particular to emergency response, if she was to get injured, I have to immediately be able to step into the role. And likewise, the guys working for me, I would normally have 3 petty officer fitters, engine room artificers we call them, mechanical engineers basically, and each one of them at any time is able to take over my role in its totality, because if we can't, if something can go wrong, the Murphy's Law, it will go wrong, and in particular in an emergency situation, we have to be able to operate. So it's not as clear. People like to have very, very clear cut lines. When you're at sea, you're such a close team. Everybody needs to be so multi-rolled. They all have to be on the top of their game. But for the most part at sea, the chief ERA would be in charge of ensuring the work is done that the MEO requires to be done. And the ERAs, the engine room artificers, the mechanical engineers, they're the guys who actually do the work from everything from the main engines to generators to the shafting line, which is the propeller systems,
overhauling pumps.
I mean, the joke is, they bend it, we mend it. You break it, we fix it. That's what we do, and everything in between. And I suppose that's for me anyway. I think you're the same.
Yeah, it's very much a partnership within the engineering branch. Everyone kind of has to work together to keep the show on the road. We're kind of important that we don't want the ship to be dead in the middle of the sea. There's no assistance out there, so we have to make sure that when we go to sea that everything is running. We have our pre-sea checks to make sure everything is running as we need it to be. We have to make sure that we have all the required spares so that if we're stuck out there that we can fix something, that we make sure people are trained properly, that we know how to fix the equipment. So we're very much a self-reliant system on board, and everyone works for each other to make sure that we stay.
And very much one of the elements that I think that we both enjoy the most, one of the most, is that you're not just your engineering role; it's all the other roles. In particular, everybody likes the damage control and firefighting. I mean, who doesn't like getting to be a fireman for a day? But that ship is its own fire service, you know. We have advanced paramedics on board because the ship is in its first. The person to look to if there's an incident will be ourselves. We're a floating town. I mean, our chefs, which are one of the people we're currently looking for, our chefs have to provide 3 meals a day, regardless of the weather, to
a crew of 40
people, you know. I mean, that's the skill that's required in that to keep going. So it's this whole community out there, outside the horizon, far from view, you know. These,
we disappear.
Great, and a couple of questions, I guess, following from that I have. A very quick one: when you say you're recruiting a chef into the Irish Naval Service, do they have to also go through the same training as everybody else, for example,
so everyone
or is there
required
different?
to do basic military training, because one day you could be a chef, and the next day you could be on an emergency response team, or you could be up on maritime interdiction operations. So a chef is just not solely based in the galley. A chef could be up on deck manning a weapon, or could be responding in a fire situation. So everyone has to have the same basic military training and the same basic understanding of the different operations that happen on board. And then I suppose your core skill is kind of secondary nearly to all of that, because we have to make sure that everyone is trained properly, so everyone stays safe and everything runs smoothly on board.
Brilliant. And I definitely want to talk a little bit about how that works from, you know, once people come in, what that training looks like and the pathways. But one thing, Rory, you mentioned there was you can come in 2 ways, commissioned or enlisted. Can you clarify and maybe just talk a little bit about what that actually means?
Okay, so quite often if a person, before they leave school or just after they finish college, they might decide they want to join the Naval Service as an officer. So the primary route is as a cadetship. A cadetship is basically you're undergoing a period of military training for 2 years. It's quite intensive, and you're coming out of that training as a junior leader. You'll be commissioned. A commission is a piece of paper from the president that says you're an officer of the state. Inherent to being an officer, to being commissioned, your signature and what you're doing as an officer actually carries a lot of weight, because you eventually develop the power of command. And you could actually be in a situation, I know when you're 19 or 20 you wouldn't think about it, but further down the line you could actually be in a situation where to save a ship you might have to consider to hazarding some people. So it's a lot of weight of responsibility. You're taking the responsibility. So that cadetship starts off like everybody else, learning how to being the military. The bare bones basic of disciplines and discipline, military law, military skills. So that's a cadetship, very intensive. And that's how we primarily produce our officers. We also then have commissioning from the ranks, which we hope over the next few years will occur more and more, where a person in the Defence Forces decides they want to change from being enlisted to gaining a commission, and they undergo a period of training and they become an officer. And enlisted, we call it general enlistment,
general recruitment,
which basically a person applies, they undergo an aptitude test, they undergo a fitness test, they undergo a short interview to make sure they're suitable, and they come in then for their basic military training. It's a much shorter basic military training, because you're not training after a cadetship of 2 years. You have a junior leader. After your basic training, you have a basically trained service person who's now primed to learn for the next for the next 12 months before they are considered a fully functioning soldier, sailor, or aircrew, because there's so much learning involved. Most people will take about 12 to 14 months before they'll be at that what we call an able rating, which is you're an able. It's a term from the days of sail. You're an able seaman. You're able to do everything.
Capable and competent, kind of.
So it is a long pathway, but it's very rewarding, because all those little skills that you heard us talk about damage control, working together, learning this this world that happens out over the horizon. That takes time and it takes adjustment, you know. So that's the difference. And fundamentally, you will generally have a commissioned officer, non-commissioned officers, which are your more senior enlisted people who've gone further leadership and management training, and your enlisted personnel, and you will work together as a team. And the best teams are those teams that respect each other, that understand your individual roles, and can get along, have a bit of a laugh, you know. Yeah. So it's very, very good, you know.
Yeah. Brilliant. And can we talk a little bit more about that first, 12, 14, 18 months when you come in? And what does that training look like? And are you in with the part like the Air Corps and are they all trained? Are you guys all trained together, or you're segregated from the beginning?
So it's very separate. For a cadetship, the initial 3 months of training is spent with the Army and the Air Corps doing basic military drills, basic introduction to weapons and footwork military drills on the square, and kind of just getting a basic understanding of what military means, really, kind of terms and phrases, and understanding the rank structures and the different brigades and the different corps and how it all operates together and how we all function together. And then from the officer cadetship, then you're brought back down to Cork, and that would take place in the Curragh, in the cadet school in the Curragh, and then you're brought back down to the base.
Right.
And you work, you go into the cadet school and you do basic kind of more maritime based training. So you'd be doing onboarding or kind of navigation training or basic engineering training and basic kind of courses that you need when you go out at sea. It's very important. There's a whole host of basic courses that you need just to step foot on a ship. You have to have a sea survival, you have to have a firefighting course done, you have to have first aid course done, you have to have manual handling. There's a whole host of courses and they're all completed at the basic training stage to make sure that when you have finished your basic training that you can walk onto a ship. And it's the same in the general enlistment, the recruits course. It's 22 weeks, and they make sure that at the end of that course that you have all your basic training so that you're health and safety aware, because obviously at sea health and safety is very important. So it's all it's just about kind of giving the person a basic maritime knowledge and giving them a basic maritime awareness with the core basic military skills. And then as they go on, that develops. So after the 22 weeks, it's just really a basic knowledge. And then you go to sea and your knowledge expands and you become an able rate. And then after that, then you've loads of opportunities to go down specialist routes or develop your careers further.
The able rating, so the basic military training, it's an experience. It changes a civilian into a service person. And after that basic training, then the person in the naval service, there were 4 branches, 4 kind of large specializations. So you have the executive, or what was called the seamen's branch. You have engineering, which is as you can consider the scope of engineering, like where all the different specializations within it. But you're starting off out in engineering is what we call a mechanician, which is basically an auxiliary engine room watchkeeper, a very basically trained member of the engine room staff. Then you have logistics, and then you have communications. Communications is the longest pipeline that we have from basic training, because of the level of technology and stuff that they have to learn and acquire. Everything from basic use of telephones all the way up to the Official Secrets Act. I mean, that's a large communications. You can imagine using ciphers and all the radio equipment, data burst transmissions. They even have to learn semaphore and Morse and all these sort of things. So that takes about 6 months. So they're probably the longest pathway. So for, let's say, a mechanician, or what we call a mech, a person coming into the engine room with us, they might do recruits 22 weeks. We give them a couple of weeks leave, obviously, because they need to discharge from recruits. You know, they need to decompress. Then they come back. Their basics mechs course is about 9 weeks long, and that's and it's very much a change as well. So for recruits, they're being used to being watched 24/7. Their day starts at 06 in the morning, and it just goes on until lights out. And now they're actually learning now to stand on their own 2 feet. They're not being watched as closely. They're into a more normal working day, and they're learning their own personal responsibility, carrying that discipline that they've learned from recruits with them to keep them going. Then after that next course, they'll be sent to a ship.
To
and
put into practice everything that they've learned in their course.
They then have what we call a task book. So they have a lot of stuff to learn out at sea. They have to work through that. Really, people who really take to it can do it in as little as 6 months. And after that, they do a watchkeeping exam. So with a mechanician, 12 months from being a civilian, walking up Patrick Street in Cork, to being holding a watch at night, a fully trained firefighter, a fully trained member of an interdiction team, ready to stand on their own 2 feet, and
having responsibility.
Yeah.
When you're in duty, you have responsibility for machinery to make sure it's operating correctly and checking the running levels and stuff. So there is, you can go from, I suppose, in the general 22 weeks you're being told everything to do, and then at the end of the 6 months after that, you're going to be the person who's in charge of monitoring equipment when it's running and stuff. So there is there is a big leap in responsibility there, and that's why the training is so important. It kind of sets a good base level for them to build off and work off.
And if you think about the executive side of the house or the seamanship side of the house, that young 18-year-old guy or girl who finishes recruits, we have to teach them how to drive a RIB, a rigid hulled inflatable boat, or a small boat. These things are 8 meters long. They cost $250,000. They go about 30 knots. You can have 10 fully, in good weather, you could have 10 fully armed an MIO team on board in the middle of the night with your bowman, and you're trundling along there, and you may be using night vision equipment to see.
With challenging sea conditions.
You know,
we don't operate in flat calm seas. They're the rare good days. On a normal day, you're hitting
that old adage about smooth sea never made skilled sailor is really true. A sailor is not something you just photocopy. You have to learn to do that. I mean, you have to be able to do everything from drive the boat. You have to know how to operate every weapon system aboard, from the huge 76mm guns up the front, all the way down to the 20mm, the heavy machine guns at 0.5, the GPMGs, and all the way down. They also have to learn to maintain the ship. For us anyway down below in the engine room, maintenance is just something that is. It doesn't start or stop. It just begins at the life of a ship, and it ends when that ship sails off. It just is. And our ships in particular, because you're living in a top of each other, they're spotlessly clean. Well, that doesn't happen by magic. Everybody has a responsibility. You take care of yourself, you take care of your cabin, and everybody cleans, everybody paints, everybody minds it, and it's part and parcel. So it is a huge all-encompassing way of life. It's not so much a job at sea. It's a way of life that you're living there for up to 4 weeks and longer at a time if you're on an overseas deployments. You know, so really is unique. I think, you know.
Yeah, it's when I listen to you both talking about it there, it really is an amazing skill set that you're building in people in such a short space of time. Because if you know, out in the real world where you know, in financial services, which is what I'm in, it would have no doubt taken a lot longer to build some of the skill sets you're talking about over the last 5 minutes or so. And that takes me then to kind of going back to recruitment. What kind of people are you looking for? What skill sets in the person coming out of school, finished their leaving cert, for example? What are you looking for?
So I suppose as a kind of if you want to go down kind of the general recruiting side, or general enlistment, you'll be looking for a team, someone who likes to work as a team, somebody who's interested in learning, somebody who would like a challenge, somebody who is I suppose resilient, and will be kind of calm and cool under pressure. But I mean, there are things that you can learn as well under training, and people are often surprised when they undergo training that the things that they can accomplish themselves. So if you have an interest in it, if it's something you like and you like a challenge, don't be afraid to kind of sign up and give it a shot. I mean, if it's not for you, it's not for you. But people are always surprised, especially we do a sea survival training and we have to jump off a platform and go into a pool, and it's a big challenge for a lot of people, but once they accomplish it, they kind of get a real sense of confidence from it. So once you complete the training and you're given all the knowledge, the confidence comes with that. So don't be afraid to think that you don't know enough going in, because you're given all the tools to develop and find that confidence within yourself so you can do your job. And then I suppose if you're going down the route of a cadetship, we're looking for people who would be kind of team leaders more so, who would be interested in problem solving, decision making, who would kind of have good communication skills and good team leader skills, and have good kind of good at supervision and them kind of core skills. Yeah,
absolutely. That's a key point. We can be like any organisation. We can be very quick to here comes the new boss. They're making the decisions now. But that new boss of yours could be a person just out of a 2-year cadetship who's actually has to take responsibility for maybe a team of 20 people. Some of the most senior guys could be 20 years their senior. You know, I mean, that's an intimidating responsibility for a young sub-lieutenant to try to do. So we have to train them to be able to do that, because they have to lead straight out of the box. Whereas if you come in general enlistment, it probably be 2 years, 3 years before you go on to what we call a potential NCO's course, where we train you to be a junior leader. So no one's required. No, we don't do Rambos in the Navy, because we don't need people who do these. We need calm, cool, collected people. We need the people who will run to the sound of an alarm, not run away from it. You know, but when they get there, will do the right thing. And we also need people that are able to operate without too much supervision. You obviously at 18 or 19, you mightn't have that maturity yet, but as you mature, it'll come with you, and your confidence will build. There's all those different pathways that will enable a person to grow in the confidence. I think what you said, ma'am, about resilience is really important. They say never make a decision, particularly in recruits or in diving training. Don't make a decision at night, and don't make a decision on a Monday morning about how to cope with things. But you should definitely give it a try. I know it might be you might see comments about people leaving during basic training, but actually after a few weeks of basic training, if it's not for you, well then that's probably the best time for you to leave. But even after a couple of weeks of basic training, you'll have probably gained more than you realize. I'm always blown away by the quality of the people that come into us, and I'm always blown away by how good they are, but they've no clue how good they are. They really don't, you know. I couldn't be doing that, but these are people who will. Our people are fantastic, and I suppose it's why one reason we love our jobs. Well, I do anyway. I can't speak for you, ma'am, but the people we're working with are amazing, and most of the time they have no clue that they're amazing. They're just normal, everyday guys and gals. They're doing their thing, and they don't think they're that special. But if you just step back for a minute and look at what they can do, what they know, the skill sets, the confidence, the resilience, I think the caring element of it as well. You'll see that throughout their training. They really learn to work with each other and care for the person next to them. And you'll see it constantly in the news. People will use these skills outside. In particular, you said it, ma'am, about the medical first aid training, the military first responder training. If there's an incident outside in Civilian Street, quite often if there's a member of the military pass by the Defence Forces, they will stop to render aid, because it's built into them that looking after your fellow beside you. And I think that's really, not to go off in too much of a tangent, but I think that's it's some of the best traits that we have, you know.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. And I just want to go back now a second, right? I said something very stupid. I said out in the real world there about 5 minutes ago, because I couldn't find the word for civilian. Out in the civilian world is what I meant. It's quite the opposite, in fact, in all likelihood. But just wanted to correct myself on that. And you touched on basic training. I want to just go back again, just for young people considering joining the Irish Naval Service. So things like basic physicality, is that important? Fitness? You know, people that are wanting to come in, obviously it'll make it easier, but is it a kind of a requirement that you'd be,
so when
generally
you join,
physically fit?
when you join the naval service, there's a kind of a core set of, I suppose there's a kind of set of steps, and everyone must pass them all. And it's from, you must, as soon as you, if anyone is interested in joining, they must apply online on military.ie on the careers page. And once you apply online, you have to do a psychometric test. And then after the psychometric test, you will do an interview, kind of a base interview. And then you'll also have a medical examination and a physical examination. So the physical side is you do have a basic fitness test where you have to do sit-ups, push-ups, and a 3.2 kilometer run. You don't have to have any fantastic level of fitness. It's one of the things that's worked on, no matter if you come into cadetship or as a recruit, that the basic fitness is a kind of one of the key things that they work on throughout the training. So you just have to have a basic level of fitness to come in. You don't have to be Rambo. You don't have to be any kind of ultra marathon or any kind of have any extreme interest in sports. You don't even have to be able to swim, which is another illusion when you're joining the naval service. You don't need to be able to swim. So there is a basic physical test, which is sit-ups, push-ups, and a run, and then you will have a medical exam. They'll take your blood, just kind of do medical screening. They'll do a dental check, eyesight check, hearing check. But they're all very basic. There's nothing too difficult there. Color blindness obviously is one that we don't accept, but
right.
After that, then you would have a final interview.
The physicality element of it, let's say in recruit training, I suppose a lot of people will have watched things like Full Metal Jacket and Jarhead and these movies, and you're looking at a different military, which is a very, very different training pattern, and you're also looking at specialists within that military. We have a requirement for a different person. You do need to be healthy.
Yeah.
You do need to be fit. You do need to enjoy physical training. I suppose one of the ways to look at it, if you were planning to come into recruits, is so you're doing your classes. So you might be doing work in the square, learning how to march, because foot drill, which is marching and stuff, is the core foundation of discipline. It's learning to respond to orders and to move as a team. It's really, really important. It's worked for centuries, and militaries do it for a reason. Everything in recruit training is done for a reason. Why do we push people in physical training in recruits? It's not because we want to make them feel bad about themselves. We want to make them healthier. We want to make them fitter, but also we want to show them that they can do things under pressure that they may not realise they can do. Particularly in further training, further along as you go into junior NCO training and cadet training, we cannot set a ship on fire to test your ability to work under pressure. But what we can do is we can put you on your chin strap. We can make you extraordinarily tired. We can keep you awake on exercises for a far longer time. We can make you uncomfortable, cold, wet, tired, hungry. And now we can give you something complicated to do. And if you're able to do that, the chances are you're probably able to transfer those skills to a real life situation when something explodes, a fire goes off, or like we spoke about Civilian Street, you come across a car accident, you'll be able to cope with that pressure. And we also try to teach the skills of that resilience of what to do afterwards. Because let's say when we've served on the Mediterranean, it's a tough environment, and what do you do after experiencing these things? And that's all part of military training and military life. But that physical fitness element, a lot of people fixate on it. It's okay. It's also an escape from the classroom. As we're going back to the point, if you're doing drill all day and you're sitting down in the class learning about manual handling or learning about weapons or learning about, we do dog watch classes, which are in the evening time when we tell you about the culture of the naval service and our past heroes and what we do and what the state is all about, and you're trying that can get fairly boring at times. Let's be fair. Who likes to be stuck in death by PowerPoint, which I notice has died behind me here and I have to fix in a second.
I didn't want to say.
So the physical fitness then is something you'll actually look forward to, because it's an hour out of your day to go and to learn. It's fun, you know. You're going to get wet and muddy and in the tide and all that sort of stuff, you know. But
you'll feel yourself. You'll feel the benefits of it. You'll feel yourself getting fitter. You'll feel your concentration improving. You'll feel your mental health improving. So it does.
Brilliant,
yeah.
And that continues as well.
Yeah.
it doesn't just stop in recruits. So you don't just do PT. As you go along, we train you in physical health and fitness. Every NCO and cadet is a physical training leader, and we provide training all the way up to physical training instructors, which is accessible for everybody. And at each stage, you're actually learning more about your physiology. You're learning more about your muscular structure, about diet, about exercise, about healthy living, about wellness. So
different types of training.
And actually, if you're into it, then you can keep that as a core component of what you do on the side, as in the naval service. So at lunchtime, you can run circuit classes for your fellow sailors. When you're at sea, you're leading circuit classes in a quiet afternoon. So loads of people really do enjoy the physical element of it. But the naval service, I'm going to get in trouble here about talking about the army. The army have a different attitude towards physical fitness because they're training for a different role. So they have an awful lot more of load bearing with Bergens, the heavy backpacks, and long distance route marching. We get a taste of that in recruits because it's good for you to understand, and it is great training. But you don't have to worry about carrying your house on your back over 20, 30 miles by joining the Navy, because people can get us slightly mixed up. They have a different role, they have a different focus than ourselves, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's brilliant insight, and it is so important, as you said, and particularly that aspect. And we've spoken it on the podcast before about physical fitness, mental health. It's all so heavily linked and important. So I think it's a brilliant element of what you offer as well. Can we go back? We mentioned specialization. So a couple of years down the line, you've done all some of your training. Can you talk a little bit about the avenues then that start to open up? And I know you've touched on it already, but maybe we can go back and just expand on the different avenues within the service you can go down, the different roles that are there.
Okay, so I suppose I'll talk broadly about I'll kind of split up the way that the Naval Service divided. So within the engineering branch and engineering division, you can have we've a number of different specialities that all fall into it. So from a mechanician who's a basic watchkeeper who would work with a POE or A, who would be kind of a maintenance mechanical engineer, you would have your electrician on board, or electricians. You would then have HA, so they would we call it shipwrights or hull carpentry on board. We also have the RTs, yeah. So there's kind of a bit of crossover between electricians and RTs. RTs would mainly do kind of radar, comms equipment, navigation equipment. That would be their speciality on board, and that all falls within kind of the engineering branch. And then on the other side, you'd have the deck or operations branch, and then that would cover all kind of communications. They would have the seamanship and logistics. Yeah. So we have two main, I suppose, divisions, and then within the divisions there's a load of specialities. So like when you're coming out of recruits.
Yeah, I suppose when you go into your specializations, there are generally two routes to gain an extra skill. So you take what we call if you're coming in from outside, you would call it an apprenticeship. But if you're coming in from internal, we call it a tech trainee. But it's the same thing. So a person might decide. So at the moment, you might remember FOSS is now SOLAS, and they provide apprenticeship. So that's a 4-year standards, generally a 4-year standards-based apprenticeship. And then the other route then would be a degree route. And that's how you become a trained technician in Ireland. They're the two kind of standard pathways. Yeah. So, and this again, where people get lost is that, so our artificer, this mechanical maintenance engineer that we have, he may actually be a class 3 marine engineer. He might be a heavy diesel mechanic. He might be my trade is fitter turner. He might be a plant and automotive fitter. It all depends. So that basic trade that he has, we've augmented that with the Navy training on top of it. But it's that diversity actually of training which makes us so able to face what we need to do, because the more skill sets you have. The electricians in particular are now nearly all doing a degree, ma'am, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's kind of a level 7, level 8. There's a whole host between physics and instrumentation, electronical control. There's a whole list of options that are available. They kind of are more focused because systems now are gone so control based that electronic control and instrumentation is kind of the roles that a lot of them are going down, and that's where the core learning comes from for them.
So in addition to that, so when the ma'am joined, she would have done her cadetship and she took her engineering degree. So I came in as an apprentice route, but as I went through my training, you're able to convert and undergo the examination. So I'm also a marine engineer, but in civilian terms, I'm a class 3 marine engineer, what is a watchkeeper, and the ma'am is a class 2. So we try to mirror a little what occurs in civilian employment and in the mercantile marine, but it doesn't translate perfectly, but there's always the opportunity to upskill. So at the moment, a colleague of ours in the next office has just finished an exciting degree in industrial engineering. And actually we're examining that as a really cost-effective method of providing some CPD back to all our chief, the ERAs, the fitters, and hopefully our junior engineers as well. We also do then with our NCO training, as you go through your NCO training, when you become a potential NCO, basically when you become a junior leader, you will have access to a level 6, which is a higher certificate in leadership management and naval studies. And then as you progress, you'll gain access to a level 7, which is an ordinary degree in leadership management and naval studies. And over the last 12 months, I've been working with a colleague of mine, RSM Pat Balfe, on a project to hopefully in the future deliver a level 8, which is an honours degree in leadership management and naval studies. So that there is a distinct possibility in the next 2 or 3 years that if you join with us, we'll guarantee you a life of adventure. We can guarantee you have the chance. We can now guarantee you have the chance to undergo the process of obtaining a level 7 in leadership and management. And we really do hope there's a possibility of obtaining an ordinary degree in an engineering subject as well. But it all costs money and it'll all depend on budgets. But certainly the ma'am has been doing incredible work over the last 6 months or so, putting business cases together to see what extra we can deliver back to our people. Because how do we translate the skills and stuff that we're learning here to a way that a civilian employer in the future can understand? And that's a lot of that is tied up to what do you call it, recognition, certification. You know, I don't mean to be cruel, but that piece of paper that someone says you've got that qualification, that's really important to even just get in to the job market when you leave, you know.
To try and make our training equivalent so it has some parallel so that it's understandable. So that when people leave that they're not just left, they don't have on their CV that they did a potential NCO's course. They got a level 7 in leadership. And that's very important to us. We all, I mean, there's 2 routes into the Navy. We also take direct entries, which we're myself and Sen.Chief are working on direct entries, and people who maybe have a qualification, level 6, level 7, level 8, and they're interested in joining the naval service, and I was looking for a challenge. And I know very much now, once you have a qualification, it's all about experience, and you will get a wealth of experience in the naval service, not just in your core qualification, but it's all the things that come outside of that. You'll have experience with different teams, working in different environments, and they're all kind of expertise that you can bring to your core qualification and develop your
the word that comes to mind, the direct entry, is challenging, right? If a person wants to challenge themselves, so they're after leaving college, or they're in a job and they're not too quite sure what to do, definitely they should explore perhaps going the direct entry route. It's more intensive, so they will come in, they get their basic military training, but a little bit like cadetships, where after 2 years they would be considered to be, you're now a leader. After about 12 months, most of the direct entries will be considered. Well, they're not considered. They will be joining as NCOs. They'll be joining at leading hand rank, so a number of steps up the line pay wise, and it'll be an intensive 12 months. And then they're standing on their own 2 feet on the deck of a ship, doing their job. But again, it's the range of It's all available on
military.ie.
The range of qualifications that you can actually join at, because we're so diverse.
Yeah.
So we have one title, but we've got so many different things that you can be within that. Look it up, take a look, and come take a look at it, because the opportunity it presents quite often. People are caught in that, they go to apply for a job, you need 5 years experience,
Yeah.
Well, we'll give you 5 years experience that you won't get anywhere else. We would hope that you'd stay a lot longer than 5 years. But you can come here, develop, and all those other skills which are kind of hard to develop, the confidence, the decision making,
kind of working as a team, all them kind of
things.
Kind of core competencies that employers look for now are all things that resilience, that calm under pressure, they're all things that you learn during your time in the naval service.
And you're not less by joining as a direct entry. You earn your stripes, as we say. You earn it. You will be acting in that role. You will have the full suite of the Defence Force experience ahead of you. Once you're a member of the Defence Forces, you'll be able to apply for overseas service. You'll be able to apply for it will take a number of years if you're, let's say, of heavy physical training. You could apply for the Naval Service diving section. All these things are open to you. There's no barrier to you just because you came in around on a short route and gained your NCOs. So it really is. It is our current warrant officer, the guy that I work for, who's the most senior enlisted engineer in the engineering branch. He's a direct entry. He started off, I believe, I may be wrong, he started off his life in a dairy, perhaps as a 16-year-old apprenticeship, and he joined us maybe 21, 22, and 30 years later he's still here working away. And actually, over 50% of our fitters, these ERAs that we keep on mentioning, they're direct entries. So there's no way the naval service would function without direct entries. It's a really important route, and definitely we have dozens of places, man. Yeah. Dozens of places available across EAs, which is electrical, hull artificers. Hull artificers are actually a very strange beast, really, because you're a carpenter trade, but one of their most vital roles for us is the maintenance of rigid hulled inflatable craft, because when we're down off the coast of Libya, I cannot ring to get that boat fixed if I have a crack, and I can't come out of the area operations, so we actually be able to carry those skills on board. And then nearly even more important than that, having a hull artificer provides a damage control and firefighting expert on each ship. So we train with the Royal Navy for that, because they're considered the pinnacle the elite of damage control or firefighting training. So we send our guys across on a very, very intensive course there, and they come back as it's a CBRN 35 course, but they basically come back as a damage control firefighting instructor, and it's built into the hull artificers that each of them goes and does that. So it provides a ship with a uniquely capable individual, and so important.
Who's essential to the MEO, essential to the engineer, to assist with the training on board, and to assist if there is ever a scenario that their expertise, they have one sole role of maintaining smoke boundaries or maintaining water ingress, and that's so important.
And you might help me, ma'am, I probably get the course wrong, but as they progress then as well, we hope to provide a diploma in marine
surveying,
small craft surveying. So they'll also go on to a degree, a diploma level course in surveying small craft, which is inspecting them and signing off. Because you can imagine, obviously, that boat that we talked about earlier on, the young 18 or 19-year-old driving a boat at 30 knots, someone has to sign off to say that boat is safe. That's a huge responsibility. It's a very, very technical skill. So there's a huge training. Oh, I almost dropped the mic. There's a huge training pathway available to the hull artificers, which could be dismissed as if someone was to just read the top line. Oh, sure, that's just a carpenter.
It's so much more. A carpenter is just the basic qualification. It all builds on top of there, and there's skills you won't learn anywhere else. There's nowhere else in Ireland where you're going to learn about ship's husbandry, or you're going to learn about damage control and firefighting the way that they do here. We also
I mean,
have the
it's
RTs. RTs
sorry,
that do the
Neve.
radar, navigation and comms. What else do we?
We also, I
I
suppose,
can't
very
remember
similar
which
to
one.
RTs as well. We have the Naval Computer Centre,
Yeah.
because obviously you can imagine how electronics heavy and computer heavy modern communications is. We train our guys. They're our network engineers. They are the wizards that look after all your IT, and they're very, very similar to RTs in their level of training required. They are very, very highly trained. They're trained now. I believe they're being trained in 2 dual qualifications as well. Some of them. So some of
Yeah.
these guys are coming in and are actually ending up as both IT engineers and radio radar technicians. So there is a fantastic pathway available. Currently, I don't think that's open to direct entry.
No,
At the moment. Currently,
we
that's
recruit
only
from within.
that's only through
Right.
tech trainees.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're aware that the report on the Commission of the Defence Forces has just come out. So that's going to present a very exciting time, we think, here in the next few years for Naval Service. Contained within that, there's some very, very exciting proposals in the cyber security area. So definitely, if there was someone listening who was in that area, I would suggest that in the coming months and years that they look out for information, because we suspect, we're waiting on decisions, but we suspect that there are going to be exciting opportunities in the future in that. But I suppose, like anything else, we can't predict the future perfectly, but it's a fairly clear and hard-hitting report. That's actually going to, for what we feel down here, represent a massive expansion of the Naval Service under those plans, and we do genuinely hope that they come to fruition, and we get lots more sailors out of it, you know.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic insights, and I mean, I think just listening to you both, it's exciting times now, and with the opportunities that are there, but certainly based on that report, it looks like there's exciting times in the future. I think it's very important that for people listening, for example, coming out of their leaving cert or junior cert, that you can go into the Navy, but education doesn't stop there. It's continuous education as you go through. The Navy will support you in your education. And also equally important, if you do decide to continue with your education, outside of the Navy, that there is direct entry opportunities. So you don't have to put it completely aside and choose now that will I try and join or not. That it's an opportunity that will be there.
I'd just say, like, there's also opportunities within the Naval Service if you are interested in doing a degree, like say as an engineer, if I want to do project manager or whatever, like you can do that alongside your core job. The Naval Service will facilitate that. They will. There's a refund of fees scheme that people can apply for. So you don't typically have to, if you want to further your education and your professional, you don't have to do it in your core. If you have taken an interest in something else, you can diverse into that. The Naval Service is very pro in backing people to develop and to continue develop and to continue learning and to continue getting knowledge, and there's lots of flexibility in how you get that knowledge and the number of courses. There's no restriction on the institute, the educational institute that you can link up with, and there's also obviously there are certain core courses that are fully funded by the Naval Service and fully backed, but then outside of that, if they're not for you, there are further opportunities that are funded as well and partially funded. So you're not just on one path that you cannot get off. There are so many options for people once they come in.
Brilliant.
Like even if as there's plenty of engineers and plenty of ERAs that are divers as well, and once you go down the diving route, there's a whole host of diving related courses that you can do, even though your core skill would be in engineering. There's so many diverse options for people. You're never put in a box. There's plenty of opportunities.
Brilliant. And is there upper and minimum age limits? So for direct entry, is there an upper limit, and how young can you join?
Yeah, so for a direct entry officer, it's you have to be 32 on the year that you apply, 32 on the 31st of December of that year.
I'm out then.
And from age 18 to 32, and then for a direct entry ERA, EART, HA, it's up to 28, isn't it? 29.
You're after catch me now. The
think
figure
it's
the
29,
figure
yeah.
for general enlistment is 27, which is basically the basic training, and
29, I think it's 29, yeah. 29 for
it's
direct
completely
entry.
slipped my mind what our core core age is for.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. It's pushed
But
out.
that'll all be up on
I'll be up on
military.ie.
military.ie.
Okay.
And actually, we are looking. It is legitimate to say that we are requesting them to examine the age limits
to increase.
But our desires and what we would like to see are part of a process we've requested, so that we couldn't reliably say at this point that they're going to move on that, but we would hope
in the future.
Some people have commented, is it too old to come in at that age as a direct entry? Not at all. One of the reasons the Naval Service has the slightly older general enlistment of 27, which is coming into basic training, is because it is a different style of training to what the Army are offering. It's a different basic training experience. We benefit from having a slightly more mature person because we have to be 100% honest and say life at sea can be difficult. You have to be a mature individual to be able to take it. The separation, in particular Ireland, because we're so family orientated, even if you don't have children yourself, being away from home is difficult. So you have to be able to cope and to deal with that. And so the slightly older person who has a bit more life experience can quite often have an easier fit into it.
Yeah, a bit more maturity. Like, it's quite an intense environment living at sea in a small, like, you'd often be sharing a cabin with somebody, and then you'd be sharing a cabin with them, but you might see them every day, or where we have messes where where people would just kind of take their downtime and they would eat there, and there'd be television, and they'd kind of have all their kind of chill out time there. And between that and your cabin, I mean, there's a gym on board, but outside of that, there's nowhere to go. So it's important that, I suppose, you have the mental maturity to be able to deal with, especially if you dislike certain people, or not everyone gets on with everyone, but it's being able to handle it, to not let it affect you too much in your day to day, and be able to get on with it.
Because that's a very good point, is that sometimes when you're doing recruitment and you can kind of get caught up with telling people about the ships and the guns and the bangs and the exciting stuff, but you also have to be very honest and talk about the mundanities of living side by side with a person for a number of weeks possibly, and you have to adapt to your own self. You don't, like, we all have our own self. We are all selfish in our own little ways, but we have to keep on top of that, and we have to have the respect for the person beside us. We are a diverse organisation, and actually you can really see it over the last 10 years, by the range of surnames on people's chests, and that's brilliant for us.
And beliefs,
we don't discriminate against gender, race, creed, sexual orientation. We don't care. We train you to be a sailor, and it's about the sailor next to you that's the end point that we want. So it is a very diverse organisation. But even within that, if you get a person from Dublin and a person from Cork, they may never
see eye to eye
because they're arguing over the GAA.
As long as you know that, as long as you know that they have your back.
Yeah, and actually it is that kind of minor irritants which is actually more prevalent than the guy going on about their 5 wins in a row for Dublin would annoy him more than the weather outside,
Or the people who are rugby orientated that don't want to listen about hurling, or don't want to learn about the GAA, or or the lads that want to watch Coronation Street in the mess, or it can be them kind of small things, I suppose, are we don't talk about them so much, but they're all the kind of the small day-to-day stuff that do happen on the ships, arguing over the telly, and
definitely for me, like, so when you're at sea, when we say there's a gym on board, it's a small room with some fixed weights, and obviously the crews will add to it over their life in the ship. They'll modify it, they'll bring in weights, and you'll have your kettlebells, and you'll have a rowing machine and a
Bikes
cross
and
trainer and a
striders.
bikes and whatever. So if it's a good day, you'll drag the rowing machine outside. But again, that 30 minutes or that like sometimes the luxury of an hour on a treadmill or doing your training, and your headphones are on and the ship is just outside. Now you're in the Navy, so one of those headphones is never in because you're listening for the alarm, and you have your overalls and your radio there and your boots just in case you do need to go straight away. But that's your selfish time of the day where you can do your thing, and it's so good for you, particularly during a summer day, to get that bike outside, get some fresh air. But an old friend of mine on the ship would, on the Elietna, which is one of our biggest ships, he would literally walk laps of the flight deck, and as if he was strolling down Patrick Street, and that's his little quiet time, and that's his period of wellness. So it's a crazy little community.
We'd also, I mean, on the ships, they're very aware of the requirement to kind of get out of the ship, get ashore. So when there are opportunities to get ashore, you could find people from the ship kind of climbing a local mountain or doing a local hike or doing a walk around, or even if it's just getting a shore cinema or going for a few drinks. All them things kind of give people different headspaces and allow them to, if it's been an intense week with a lot of kind of work and exercises and stuff, people just need to get out of there and get a bit of breathing space. So all them things are kind of
100%. And you'll find so sports obviously is really, really important, but whatever you're into, there'll be something there for you. So obviously you have the big ones, the rugby, the hurling, the football. Where we're based here in Cork Harbour, there's a plethora of teams around the harbour, like kayaking, rowing, and boxing, jiu-jitsu, and everything in between. Particularly when you're shore based, there's absolutely an abundance of time. And also you can, even from the military skills, like I'm involved in the pistol team, to the official Gaelic football team in the Navy, to the Navy's rugby team. Triathlons and Iron Woman here beside me.
There's kind of clubs within the Defence Forces for all these. So you'd often, you might do rowing, but you'd be doing it with Army and Air Corps personnel, and they're very pro kind of meeting together and running these kind of things, and that they're all things that the Naval Service would back.
And it would be a comment. Oh, sure, that's why you doing that. Sure, what's that about? Why aren't you out there inspecting fish? That adventure training, that sport training, that's a really key part of a life in the Defence Forces. Strong, cohesive teams, healthy minds and healthy bodies. Adventure training, building your confidence. That makes us better to be able to deliver on our duties to the state. It's all tied into delivering at the end point, which is placing a warship with a trained crew where it's supposed to be, doing the job it's supposed to do, and that doesn't happen just randomly. That takes logistics, training, education, and dedication from the people and experience, you know.
Yeah, so I just want to move on now to maybe just the personal aspect of your own careers. And can you talk a little bit about maybe what you enjoy most from a personal perspective from your career in the Irish Naval Service?
Yeah. Okay, so what do I enjoy most? I think I really enjoy being a marine engineer. I really enjoy the teamwork, but I mostly enjoy the problem solving side, especially when you're a ship at sea and you come across a problem and you're working with your team and it's a new problem and you're trying to problem solve it, and you manage to problem solve it and you get out the other side and everything gets functioning properly again. That challenge, and that everyone having to hunker down and put your ideas out there, and that kind of trying to figure it out, and then you get out the other side and it's solved and everything is back functioning correctly and you proceed as normal again. That I really enjoy that working as a team and that challenge as an engineer. I like the friendships you make here are just, you just couldn't even comment on it. People who have moved on from the Navy and retired always say that they miss the kind of the camaraderie between people and kind of the daily chats and the the kind of the banter and the kind of that kind of side of the naval service. They kind of miss that on a daily basis when they move on, and I think that coupled with kind of the challenge and the sense of achievement, that's I really enjoy that side. I really enjoy that side of the work. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
For me, I think definitely when I see them, what I enjoy the most is the diversity of what you're doing. The cliche about no 2 days being the same, I really do enjoy that. That you literally wake up in the morning and you could end up doing something completely different than what you had planned from the day, and that it is not mundane. That you're always doing something different. There is the range of opportunities that present itself, even just in the course of a 4-week patrol, but over the course of an entire career. You can pursue your interests, you can test things out, you can try on different hats, and it just keeps you engaged. The way that we cycle through our careers, I think you do 2 years ashore and then 2 years posted to a ship on average, and you're going into a different unit. So you've all the nice bits, like coming into a new unit for the first time and meeting old friends, and then and they are friends. Like these are people you've served with for 10 and 15 and 20 years. They are your friends, and they know you inside out. They've been at sea with you, and I enjoy that. I enjoy that diversity. Definitely, that's my favorite thing about the naval service. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Great.
kind of
and to
strange.
turn it to,
When you're working with someone on a ship, like the ships operate, so you'll be on a ship with someone for 2 years, and then it's a 2-year shore rotation. But during that 2-year sea rotation, the ships are away from the base for 165 days. They're on patrol away from the naval base in Habolin, and it's quite an intense. Like, you know everything about someone. You know what they did every weekend. You know what their kids are doing. You know what stage, if they're having the communion, who came to the party. You know what birthdays everyone is having. And then after the 2 years, you might not see them day to day, you might not communicate them, you might not even socialize with them, but then you can return into a job with them and it just kind of slots back into place again. It's kind of a strange kind of relationship that you build with people, but it's something that you hold, and it develops throughout your career, and then as you get promoted and you move on, you kind of people that you would have started off, you kind of develop with them, and you see them achieving things and you achieve things, and it's nice. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Brilliant. No, thanks for that. And could you talk then maybe what has been the biggest challenge in your careers to date?
I'll go first. I have one at the top of my list. I'm an engineer. The Naval Service only started taking women in 1995, so I joined in 2001. So that was only 6 years later. But up until the point that I had joined, there was actually no female engineers who had served on board ships as a female engineer. So myself and another officer, Lieutenant Commander Elaine Maloney, we both qualified at the same time, and we both took up our positions on ships as engineers at the same time. So it would have been, not only did you have the challenge of going out to sea and taking up the role of marine engineer and all the responsibilities that come with that, you also had the challenge of working in an environment where women hadn't worked in before, and it was just a kind of a dynamic thing where you were trying to kind of find your own feet and working with the men. The engineering branch had always been very male dominated, and I think when the female came in, and it was very difficult for the men as well, because you could see there was just kind of changed the dynamic and the different relationships, and them two things together came at the same point in time. So it was definitely something that it was a challenge on top of everything else, but a challenge that I came through and I survived, and that was definitely my high point in my career when I completed that first 2-year sea rotation and got the ship back safely, and everyone was back safely, and there was no major incidents, and they're all kind of that was definitely a high point. Yeah.
Very good, very good. Yeah. And Niamh, if I could ask how that has evolved over time, then obviously more and more women have come into the Irish Naval Service over time. Yeah.
So I suppose the engineering branch we wouldn't be flahulic with women. We're not. We would be on the lower percentages side with women, but they are definitely increasing women are more attracted to this side, because I suppose even outside the naval service, women in engineering, it's promoted so highly that the numbers are increasing, and it's more promoted to women not to be afraid of engineering, that women actually bring something to engineering. Women bring something to everything, obviously, but we our strengths in our different decision making and our different views on things all feed in, and it's very important that you have that different point of view, and that we feed into all the decision making. So, we don't have loads of women, but we do have women there, and they're working hard, and they're doing the same job as the men, and they're doing an equally good job as the men, and it's no different. It's no different. Everyone is treated equally.
Brilliant, thank you. And Rory, your biggest challenge in your career?
I suppose the highlight of my career and the biggest challenge so far, I suppose the biggest challenge was when you take your first ship as Chief ERA. So when I became Chief ERA of Etna in 2013, so it was at the time it was Seagoing, our Seagoing flagship, the largest crew, and quite often being the flagship, the most diverse range of missions. That is, at one point you might have had an engineering branch of, I believe, up to 25, 26 people with trainees included. So that's a big challenge, because you're taking your mark, you're taking your stand as a Chief ERA, and you're now taking an awful lot of responsibility, and you're answerable to one person, an MEO, and you're responsible to everybody else. You're responsible for everybody else. That's a big challenge. And within that, then in 2015, Italy, our European partner, was in the midst of the height of the migrant crisis. They called for aid. Ireland answered, and Ireland's response to that call for aid was Operation Pontus, which was the Irish government's response, a humanitarian rescue mission to Libya. I will never forget the day Commander Pierce O'Donnell, officer commanding Etna, came into the wardroom on the Monday morning and said, "Folks, we're heading to Libya, and we're leaving Friday. Make ready." And actually the ship, to its outstanding credit, was actually ready, would have been ready to deploy on the Friday, but the government response to get all the legal documents and stuff thankfully took another couple of weeks. But we went down.
3 weeks.
It took about 3 weeks, yeah. But we were ready to go. That ship, every single person, man and woman, every officer and NCO put up their hand and said, "Yeah, we'll go." We recommitted to our ship. We were a great crew, and we went down. We weren't sure exactly what we were going to find, but over the course of 22 missions over 63 days, we directly rescued and assisted in the rescue of over 3,600 people. That was my first deployment on Pontus and Etna. I think as a pinnacle of what a service can do, the pinnacle of what a nation can deliver in support of safety of life at sea and in support of your European partners, I think that is the top. And I went back again in 2018 on Operation Sophia on Samuel Beckett. Very, very different mission. But I think the Operation Pontus really was a coming of age for the naval service. We took our place among the navies of Europe, and we proved ourselves. We did a really good job. We directly rescued, over the course of all the missions, we stopped deploying ships in 2018. And over the course of all the missions, we directly rescued over 18,000 people, and we assisted in the rescue of over 22,000 people. And
incredible.
It was incredible. And as a challenge, operating at sea on a day-to-day basis is challenging, but conducting missions at that level and the intensity at that level, and it goes without saying, the team that we've been talking about, the people, those young people that responded, were magnificent. I couldn't praise them high enough. I will literally, your jaw would be on the floor if you see how people were willing to push themselves and give of themselves. It was incredible. That's definitely the highlight for me. Ma'am, you've served on a number of them as well, didn't you?
No, I wasn't on Pontus. No, I've done other various missions. I've been around Asia and up the Baltic and across the States. But not Pontus. Didn't come for me.
No, that's amazing. And if I could ask both of you as well, because you've both, you're obviously on incredible, have had incredible careers, and that continues. But if you could go back and meet your younger self, you know, when you were just starting off, maybe when you were, you know, 17, 18 years old, based on what you know now, what advice would you give yourselves?
What advice would I give myself? I suppose it would be to have more confidence and trust in myself. That I think when I joined the Navy, I joined out of school, and to be honest, the naval service wasn't really on my radar so much. I kind of stumbled into it a bit, and I didn't have the sense that I was doing a job for life. Everyone I kind of knew was just going to college, and I kind of said, "Oh yeah, sure, it's just I don't know if I knew if I was going to be here 20 years later, or if I knew I didn't really know. You're coming out of school, and everyone was kind of caught up in it. But I think that I would like to have said, just be more confident, and grab all the opportunities that come your way. Don't be afraid of things. Go out and put yourself out there, and when you do it, you will most likely succeed. People don't fail often, and I think when you're coming out of school, just don't be afraid of a challenge. Take on a challenge and do your best. And if you do your best at something, people always respect you for that. Yeah, I think
wonderful advice.
Things will work out if you work hard. Yeah.
Super.
I was trying to listen and think at the same time. I agree with what you're saying, you know, and it's a really valid point about the confidence in yourselves. I think if I could go back and talk to 18-year-old Rory, is to, I suppose I was the opposite. We were chasing too hard. You were running too hard. You were being too hard on yourself. So you were running into brick walls as opposed to taking a step back and thinking more clearly. But you gained maturity to actually apply your problem-solving abilities as opposed to just breaking it down from, I won't give up, I'll just keep on going until eventually the machine gives in. You know, the machine will never win, as we used to be said, an old instructor of ours used to say. But to slow down, to think things through, because your enthusiasm is fantastic, and it is fantastic enthusiasm, to have great enthusiasm. But enthusiasm without planning is not a way to get through engineering. But I think that confidence. I joined the reserve at a very, very young age, way before you were supposed to join the reserve. So I knew what the military was, and I suppose that led to definitely my part a slight overconfidence in certain things, you know. So I would definitely say slow down, think things through, and yeah, that's kind of it. I'm trying to think back to those days. It seems a long time ago. Yeah. When you join the Navy, or they take photographs of you and they put them on the wall of the training office so that, you know, you can put a name to a face, a name to a face. And it's so funny that when you're 18 or 19 and you think you're a fully grown man, you know, and in many ways you are, you know, but actually when you look back, you realise just how much of a child you may have actually been in certain ways. Absolutely. And you were just finding your way in the world. So I suppose you try not to look back and be too harsh on yourself either, you know, because you are only 18 or 19 and you are allowed to make mistakes. And definitely from my experience, the Naval Service has provided you the space. We believe this way at sea. So if you make a mistake at sea, I know I'm straying off the point, as long as you tell us about it, we believe in honesty in all things. So if you break something, let's say, as long as you tell us and we know that it's broken, that's okay, you know. And that kind of carries through with everything. If you have a problem, you put up your hand in the Naval Service, and I've never seen a person not get assistance for whatever that problem is. And I think that's a remarkable thing to be able to say, that if you have a problem, talk to someone, put up your hand, you'll get assistance. And if you have an idea, put up your hand. You won't be dismissed in the engineering department. No. I'm sure you're the same as Seaman, that things have got fixed because the person who's just in the door and doesn't have their nose pressed directly up against the problem actually goes, why is this loose? You know, and that's the...
Yeah.
No, it does happen.
It does happen, absolutely.
But the team kind of pulls together, and you kind of understand because you've been there yourself, and the team nurtures the person through. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, great advice. And then Commander Niamh Niarta and Senior Chief Petty Officer Rory de Barra, it's been an honour, honestly, talking to you. I think you've given fascinating insights into the Irish Naval Service.
Yeah,
I think it's
absolutely.
really important to get it out there. And as a proud Irishman and proud European living in Portugal, I just want to say, thank you for everything you do in your daily lives, and I appreciate it very, very much. And thank you.
Thank you
Thank you very much,
Brendan.
Brendan.
Thank you
Really
very much.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.